Good evening, everyone. It's Monday, July 7th, 2025, and this is indeed a regular meeting of Moscow City Council.
If you could please rise if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, first up tonight is the consent agenda, and this consists of items that have been previously vetted by either the Public Works and Finance or Administrative Committee and consist largely of routine housekeeping type items. Any item can be removed by any member of the City Council for separate consideration.
Mr. Mayor,
Madam,
I would like to pull consent agenda item E, the consideration of the 1912 Center third floor development concept off, and I would propose we approve the consent agenda with everything minus item E.
Second.
moved and seconded. Anything else? Okay, all
I
in
have a
favor?
question actually on that. Is that okay? It's more procedural,
Yeah.
only because it hasn't happened before. What if we said no? Then does it go back on the consent agenda?
I don't know.
I'm just curious.
Parliamentarian?
No, by state law now, any item can be removed by a single member of the council to be considered separately.
Which actually just happened this session.
Yeah, I just,
Right, I
it's
forgot.
never
Yeah.
happened, so I was curious. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the rest of the consent agenda? Oh, no, we have to do this one by one.
go one by one.
Sorry.
Haley,
Haley, aye.
Gina?
Aye.
Drew?
Aye.
Julia?
Aye.
Sandra?
Aye.
And Bryce?
Aye.
Okay, back to item E. What's up?
I just wanted to,
Oh.
sorry, Drew, go for it.
I'm going to recuse myself from this conversation, take a step off the stand while it's talked about for potential conflict of interest professionally.
Oh, really? That, Mr. Mayor, that is not why I wanted to pull it off the agenda, but that works out for 2 for 1. Just, it's something that we, I know there's community interest in, and just want to make sure that we offer additional clarity on it and clarify what the project is or isn't being paid for by, and the timeline and who's doing what. So that was my logic for wanting to take E off the consent agenda.
How would you like to proceed?
I don't, Bill or David, whoever, the same information that was provided at the admin meeting 2 weeks ago is just the same overview I'm hoping to get here for our very large audience and our avid viewers at home. But just for transparency's sake, would love to belt and suspenders this. So,
Or you could watch the admin meeting.
Yeah, which we already did.
David Schott, Director of Parks.
All right. Mayor Betke, members of council, thank you for having us tonight. I'm pleased to welcome back Jenny Kostroff. Jenny is the Executive Director of the Heart of the Arts, and she will be giving you a presentation on the proposed conceptual schematic for the development of the third floor of the 1912 Center. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jenny. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
So I'm going to talk about it real quick because I did talk about it before. So you do know, at least if you looked at the admin committee information, what we're proposing, but I'll go over it for those who are unfamiliar with the 1912 Center third floor project. So the third floor currently is in a state of, it's been torn back. And so it's got a subfloor that has a slope to it because it was originally designed to be an auditorium. And so the project that we're looking at with the third floor would be leveling out that slope so that underneath we'd be able to do all sorts of great heating, cooling, electrical. There will be sprinkling underneath that subfloor because it will be high enough at some points that it would need sprinkling underneath. But this is this top part. Okay. Oh, there we go. Big purple blotch. All right. So the big purple blotch gives you, this is the east end of the third floor. This would become the culinary lab. This space would be a commercial kitchen space that would be able to do teaching with different teaching stations, a shared eating station here in the front that could serve for testing for students who might be doing classwork. And then this could also help farmers market vendors be able to cook simultaneously if they wanted to. We'll have a large prep area here that would be like a commercial kitchen so that you'd have those standard large hood items underneath to do cooking and frying and whatever is needed for short order cooking in the space, and then a scullery space at the back. We would have a single-use restroom and janitor's closet, along with the grease trap for this level here. In this space in here, elevator already exists, comes to the third floor already. Then fire doors, making this a safe stairwell, and also blocking sound from these spaces, but allowing for service to come from the kitchen easily to the large ballroom space if you were having a larger wedding. That'll end up being a 200-person seated space. Storage will be these two closets on either side, sort of framing in an entry point to the ballroom on the west side. Sorry, did I say this is east? This is west. And then a bathroom core so that we would have additional single-use bathrooms on that side. And then two spaces for the west wing of the building that will also have a little kitchenette in this in-between space that would serve both the spaces. So in the event you had a dinner in the studio, which will just be a nice wood floor room that can be used for sort of studio art forms like dance and tai chi and karate, but then where they want a sprung wood floor. But it could also serve for a small dinner item and then have a kitchenette attached to it. And then a sky lounge. And the sky lounge will look out over U of I as the highest point in the building, and it has a beautiful view. So the spaces are really nicely lined out. You got into wanting to know who's paying for this. The project is at this point being paid for in full by Heart of the Arts, Inc., which is the nonprofit company that the city has hired to run, maintain, and grow the 1912 Center spaces. So that's us. So we will be doing the fundraising for this project. At the point we're at now, we're paying for plans, which is why Drew recused himself with KNIT. KNIT Studios is doing our construction documents at present for this outline, which is why we're coming to you for the approval of this concept, so that we can finish those construction documents and get our renderings for this space so that the community can see those to see what the spaces will look like. In doing so, we will be initially kicking off our first phase of construction fundraising, which I'm planning will probably be sitting in the $1 million, $1.5 million range. So we will be fundraising specifically for that first phase. The first phase, like the rest of the building, as Bill knows, we've been through so many phases, but this first phase of the third floor, because we have to identify the different phasing, but the third floor phase will be infrastructure. So that'll look at all the stubbing in of electrical, plumbing, the subfloor, getting that leveled out, getting the heating and cooling units in place on the roof so that we've got those figured out. And in essence, creating the structure for this renovation. And then we'll get into each space, we'll have details. But the nice part is then, as I think I said in the admin committee meeting, is that then it's a la carte. Say somebody wanted to come in and sponsor the culinary lab in full. That's great. We can start on that construction immediately. So at any point, anybody in town that has a favorite project can help guide that project to fruition more immediately. When I say anybody in town, we fundraise from our community. We also write grants, but typically and in fact, all of you should be incredibly proud because the 1912 Center has been funded by our community. So it's something that's not been the grant funding big idea that everyone's, oh, let's write a big grant. And it's like, no, we're getting $19.12 donations from a lot of wonderful people in this community who are supporting this project to grow and over time. Because as our town knows, we grow and then we need more spaces for the activities we want to do. This will serve those new spaces. So I have high hopes that we can create a culinary arts program that will work with high school kids and the career and technical education components that are available at the high school and start to create that kind of programming. And also, we need more caterers in town because as we have events, it's like Stephanie Wilkes is constantly booked, Thresh Catering constantly booked. It's like we could actually, and you have a space like this where somebody can get into that and use our space as their public health approved kitchen. So there will be a lot of really great features that this adds to what we already have at the 1912 Center, but also dovetails nicely with it, but then adds more value. So.
Mr. Mayor, all I was going to add, thank you. Yeah, I have no concerns. this is something that I'm really excited about. And as we are getting ready to go through the budget workshop this week as council, I wanted to make sure that it's not, it is something that will come with a large price tag, but I wanted to just double down that this is not something that is being funded by city taxpayer dollars through our city taxpayer budget mechanism outside of contracting with Heart of the Arts for the services the
I was going to say,
organization
yeah, you do
provides.
see us show up in
Yes.
the budget, and that is, so everyone does know, that is not for the renovations.
It's for the
We
operations.
work independently to raise funds. And along those lines, we're having two events. August 23rd is the Penthouse Picnic. So if you would like to be one of the very first people to eat in the upstairs spaces, we're having a special sneak peek picnic event in the top floor that will show you the renderings before everyone else gets to see them. And that's on the 23rd of August. It's $100 a ticket, with all that money going specifically to this renovation. And then say that's above your price point, we have a $25 pie in the sky event that will be happening on September 7th. And that's at 2:00 in the afternoon. For those people that don't do late nights and alcohol, we can offer you pie, ice cream, coffee, and socializing, and still seeing those renderings for $25 a ticket. So both of those are going to have all that money going into the project, with then people learning about it and finding out what they can do to add more value.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Jenny, gosh, thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
I know it's no small thing. I know, and David, thank you too for coming last minute. I was just trying to wrap my mind, and I know I do a lot with 1912, and so I'm just trying to see if my head's mushy at all, but it seems to me that like a month ago you were here and presented. Was there anything different that you shared with tonight that you shared a month ago?
I might have mentioned things about the subfloor that we didn't talk about before. I don't know,
Yeah,
because
okay.
I don't remember what I got into, because
Yeah,
I
you
can
did.
talk about this. I did talk about it. Okay. I can talk about this till the cows come home. And typically I repeat a lot of the same things because they're super cool. Like, I love the farmhouse table in the kitchen so that people can sit and eat a meal together. I always think about when you have a catering, the catering help needs to sit down and actually eat together too. That's important. And that they have a place that they can eat, or the students that have made something wonderful that they can sit down and eat. So like, I have excited parts like that, but I know what you're saying. I think nothing has changed. We're finessing details. So working with KNIT right now, we're going, now hold on a second. Where will we put the floor drains in the kitchen? Where should those be? And let's make sure our plumbing lines work. And so we're getting into those finessings. And as we do that, some of the things are changing, because we're checking in with our community development office to make sure that we're not like off in the weeds with ideas, so that we're on the right track to make sure they happen. And in that process, like, the bathroom count might change, or how many urinals we need and things like that. So if I mentioned something today that I didn't before, that's where that probably
Sure.
came from, because it is a moving target.
Yeah.
A little
No,
bit,
thanks a lot.
not a
It's,
big one.
I think the only different thing that you did mention is the nature of the funding and where
Yeah.
the evolution of the building has come from. And I think I've heard it before, but I don't know that I've heard it long enough or often enough to be able to go, that's where the funding comes from. You know what I mean? So I think maybe a T-shirt
This-
wraps around.
We
you
are
or
not
something.
funded by the city.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, it's a very serious, huge chunk of importance.
But
And
I will say the partnership between us is one that I actually talk about with a lot of other municipalities and individuals that are trying to preserve buildings, because one of the things that's been so great and so joyous about this occasion, like this process, has been that we are able to do so many great things for our town with this resource, and the city helping us to maintain an even keel for the office is huge. I mean, the pandemic would have flattened us if we had been a regular nonprofit trying to run a space with events, but because we were able to support the day-to-day of just me being in the job and in the space, we could do the renovation of the second floor while everyone was out of the building. I'm like, come on, you can't get a better lineup of like that couldn't have happened better. So yeah.
I do think that Heart of the Arts and the partnership shows us what's really great about Moscow.
Yeah.
I really, really agree with that.
And as a taxpayer myself, I really appreciate the fact that a very set budget item shows up every year for this project. It's very set. If this had been a city project, that number could have been all over the place, and it would have been something that was in the conversations would have been more difficult, because it's like, is this where we should be putting our money? You guys go through that all the time. So this is a smart by the city with Heart of the Arts in that partnership, because we're maximizing the value for the dollar.
Agree.
Dramatically.
Completely.
I mean, our plans with NIT, I mean, not to spoil anything, but it's like we're spending $400,000 to get our construction documents and everything set up. Like, that takes money, and that's not something that you're having to see here at the council bench. Yeah. So, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Jenny.
So do we move to
Anybody
approve this?
approve the conceptual schematic for the development of the third floor of the 1912 Center.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. Bryce. Aye. Sandra.
Aye.
Julia.
Aye.
Gina.
Absolutely, aye.
And Haley.
Aye.
Okay, that takes us through the consent agenda in its entirety.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, David.
Next up, we come to public comment time. And for the next 15 minutes in 3-minute increments, we invite members of the public to come up to the podium, state your name, where you live, and then give us what's on your mind, what you suggest, as long as it's not on tonight's agenda, nor pending before Planning and Zoning Commission or the Zoning Board of Adjustment. So, go.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening.
Good.
Happy to stop by. My name's Kent Salisbury, resident here in Moscow, Idaho. I have a few important things I'd like to bring up. I've done a lot of cleaning the city downtown area since mid-January of this year. And I've learned quite a lot about improving the local environment and its environmental response to that cleanup, what it would take for the city to put people out there 2 to 4 hours a day, just 1 or 2 people to sweep and improve the local environment. I found that the downtown customers and local city residents really appreciate having a clean downtown. I've worked really hard. I've got a lot of compliments from people about keeping it clean and how they enjoy that and find it better off for themselves. And that's something they value, that they would like the city to improve. I've had the opportunity to speak with a few city employees as well to make recommendations, quite honestly, with the community service that I helped out with, and to talk to their own city managers about maybe trying to find some allocation time where they can spend those 1 to 2 hours or 2 to 4 hours a day with 1 to 2 people just to sweep. It really helps the long-term residual of that downtown environment. It improves the greater local environmental response as to the microclimatic basis of leaving the small trash. It changed from the small scale to a large scale. It makes a big difference. This is we learned in climate science in general. So I'm happy to bring that up this evening. And then also I've been walking around town quite a lot as usual. And I've noticed some graffiti that needs to be removed, quite unlawful and insulting graffiti. I wouldn't even mention it, but it's much as a direct insult to the town and students and things like that. I try to speak with business owners honestly, that they would remove themselves. I spoke with a policeman who, I mentioned it to, and that I thought it was his job to work about removing the illegal graffiti and work with city council to get that done. It wouldn't take much to have a proper painting and paint over that graffiti and then it's gone. It wouldn't take much for the city management. And I did write a letter to you, Mayor, about complaint resolution. That's basically what I'm speaking here this evening. Other than that, I do have a problem with a new restaurant downtown, and it's a public name, the Bad Bitch Restaurant. I thought that was inappropriate for public display. I thought they should change their name, or at least remove the offensive letters from their restaurant name. Maybe just have BB Restaurant, because I don't like to walk by and see expletives on the front. I thought that was inappropriate for the city zoning, things like that. And it goes with a greater public importance as a city zoning code, yes, and your city zoning management principle and everything. It's a wonderful time of year to get that thing going and look after the city on a larger scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Salisbury.
Thank you, Kent.
Anybody else? Yes.
Good evening. I'm Tim Park. I live at 403 East A, and I have two things on my mind this evening. The first is the yard waste collection site. I've spoken to the council about before, and I got in touch with Tim Davis of Facilities, I believe, and I came up with some suggestions, and he did implement one suggestion. They shut down parking to the south on Almond, which is kind of a benefit, but bottom line is the facility is still kind of a scary place to use, and I prefer not to use it if it's crowded or whatever. So I put this out to the council. I personally would gladly pay a fee to go somewhere in the city and drop off my yard waste. I don't know that many other residents would gladly pay a fee, but maybe. So there you go. That's issue number one. My second issue is wheeled vehicles, motorized or whatever, skateboards, scooters, one-wheelers that are on the sidewalks of the city. Even a slowly pedaled bicycle moves at 4 miles an hour, maybe 5 miles an hour, and I personally would not like to be hit by a bicycle moving at that speed. It's become quite an issue, at least to me, over the last few years. There's been a huge proliferation of people moving up and down the sidewalks on wheeled vehicles, motorized or otherwise. And personally, I think the city should address the situation, do something so that there's at least some rules for folks to check in on and maybe use some common sense, but I'm not going to hold out hope on that one. So that's my second issue, and sort of akin to this, in my neighborhood, I noticed a couple young folks, maybe fifth graders, who ride electric scooters around the block. They're motorized. They're kind of a motorized vehicle. They're not of age to have a license, but they're out on the street riding around all day long and into the evening. And I would be quite distressed if they got tangled up with a motorist. So they're not on the sidewalk, but so it's just another issue that the city needs to somehow figure out. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Tim.
And thank you for the input. I will say we're always looking into getting the yard waste moved out of its current location to something a little more agreeable to people using the facility. So we are working on that one. And as scooters and other wheelie vehicles occur in town, we're looking at that too and what we can and can't do relative to regulating those. So both those issues are on our minds. But thank you for the reinforcement. Anybody else? Okay. Hearing none, we move on to item number 3, the Citizens Commission Report for the Human Rights Commission. Anthony Dallinger and Aaron Agidius.
Here we thought Aaron was just to hang out with us.
I know. I'm sorry. I am here to hang out, but just for this. So not that I don't love you all. My name is Erin Agidius. I'm the chair of the Human Rights Commission, and I'm here to provide you a very brief report on the activities for the past year. So happy to answer any questions that might come up. I did want to just maybe highlight a little bit about our membership. You may see some familiar faces and some new faces, which we always love when new people join. Talking about some of the partnerships and activities that we've done, as well as what you can expect from past and some upcoming events, just to kind of give you an all idea of what's going on. So I was reelected chair this most recent year, and Elizabeth Stevens was reelected co-chair. So we, between the two of us, are able to tag team and make sure that we try to keep things moving as swiftly and as smoothly as Ken did, but we are no Ken. So we try our best, though. We do have a few new folks just to highlight. John Freeland joined us this year. Vanessa Stevens joined us this year, and Jim Huggins joined us this year as well. So as you all know from approving them, but we are still looking for our high school and college reps. We do not have those. That's still a vacant position for us at this point. So in
Can I ask
the
you a question on that, Erin? Because
Absolutely.
I think I'll forget if we go on.
No, please do.
If we find some college students interested, what's the best avenue for them to do it? Just get the application online, or would you like to visit with them and tell them a little bit about it?
Either. I think if they're super interested and they want to get the application, I'm also happy to meet with folks, buy them coffee, and talk to them about what to expect. So
Thanks.
yeah. Yes. Okay. Going the right way. So, we had some great partnerships in this past year. So one of our ongoing ones that we did was the Palouse Pride March last year that you'll see in our upcoming and future events in the next slide. Of course, we assisted with we provided some support for the Native American Heritage Month, which featured one of our Native American authors, Randy L. Teton, in November. We did have an Addressing Hate and Housing Forum that was co-sponsored with the Idaho Housing group that I'm blanking on their name.
Housing finance.
Housing.
Yeah, IFHC.
Then you all know where I'm going
Housing
with this.
Council.
Fair Housing Council. Yes, thank you.
There you go.
And then we've also, of course, worked with the Latah County Human Rights Task Force throughout the year, not only on the Great Moscow Food Drive, but the MLK Breakfast. And so lots of opportunities to partner through there. We've had some events, some big ones. The United Against Hate Forum was one of the big ones that we did in September in conjunction with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the state of Idaho, the Latah County Human Rights Task Force, the city, the tribal leadership, local law enforcement. And so we had a wonderful panel, great discussion, a great turnout. That was kind of one of our larger events, which was absolutely wonderful. The other one that was a pretty big, large event was Black History Month film screening of Moses 13 Steps, where Edwin Moses himself came and provided some context and conversation, which was wonderful. That was a fairly well-attended one. And then Juneteenth this year. So we helped to we had folks from the commission kind of working together to build out this event. It was decided, we try to go back and forth between Moscow and Pullman every year. It has been Moscow the last 3 years for a variety of reasons. Some is limited space in Pullman, especially with the construction last year. This year, there was a conscious decision made for the city of Moscow to host the Juneteenth festival, just in showing pride and support for the activity and what it means to the city and the people of our community. So, and then the last thing that I want to highlight are just some of our future events coming up. Again, we're going to do the Great Moscow Food Drive that's coming up in August. We'll still be a part of the Pride March in September. We do host an annual Inclusive Community Month. Inclusive Community Month is, it was at one point, it was a week, it was a month that we tried to spread out multiple events once a week over the month. We might be looking at downsizing. What we're finding is it's very hard to find days where there's not a million other things happening, and just trying to be mindful of the amount of time and energy it takes to put on these events, as well as we can only tap into so many people to attend all the events all month long. So this year we're looking at doing something perhaps in conjunction with the some of the student groups at the university, sort of like a community dinner or potluck, something along those lines. And then lastly, Indigenous Peoples Day coming up in October. So we'll have some of those events, but that's all I have for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. you, Erin. You're welcome.
I just say something.
Of course.
Thanks. I
I
appreciate
knew
it.
somebody was going to
You knew I couldn't help myself. Aaron, this is always a spot that's near and dear to my heart. I think this is where I met you. Like I knew you before this, but I mean, ages ago, I shouldn't even say how many ages ago, but a few ages ago, we met on the Human Rights Commission, and it's always been a pleasure to serve on it. And just personally, I love to see how it's grown, right? It's really, you say that you can't do the same things Ken did. Ken did a lot. I'm grateful for him, but y'all have like overcome that, and you're doing so much more on your own. And I see a real variety of events up there, and I'm excited about that. As someone who will always be a little bit a part of that commission, no matter where I'm at. And as someone who likes to go to those events, thanks for what you're doing, because you really are making a difference in town. And you really are changing the dynamic, I think, of what the commission does. And it's been really fun to watch.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll be sure to give that message back to the commission as well. I know it is a team lift every time we do any of these events, and so I am just thankful that we have a group of folks who are also passionately committed to the work and are willing to kind of put in the time outside of their work hours and their normal 9-to-5 job to make things happen. So, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you. All right, and if you will not be offended, this will be my. I will bid you adieu and wish you luck on the rest of your agenda.
Thanks,
Thank you,
You
Erin.
have things to plan.
Or a life,
Next
either
year.
one.
Okay, next up, we have the Latah County Jail Memorandum of Agreement. Bill.
Thank you, Your Honor. As the council's aware, the potential closure of the Latah County Jail has been a topic of discussion for almost about 11 months now, so almost going on a year. That started with a request for the city to perform a fire inspection of the jail facility that happened in August of last year. That inspection identified some corrections that were necessary in accordance with the fire code. And that kind of spawned a cascading series of events with the county ultimately on June 10th of this year deciding that they were going to be transitioning the Latah County Jail to a temporary holding facility for court activities as soon as, I guess, no later than October 1st of this year. So I think September 30th is the anticipated timeframe when that action would occur. We've been engaged in conversations, looking at trying to potentially financially share in some of the most immediate life safety needs. But ultimately, the county determined that they felt the jail was in need of such repair that it was not feasible to make those repairs, and felt that closing the jail was the best action available to the county. This will have significant adverse impacts on us. We will now be required to transport anybody that we do arrest, which is about 250 people per year currently, down to the Nez Perce County Jail. So on that June 10th meeting on the commissioner's agenda, they had discussion of closure of the jail. They had approval of this document, this MOU that you're reviewing this evening. And they also had approval of a contract with Nez Perce County to house inmates, detainees for them. So in order to try, I've been working with the county, as I mentioned, over the course of the last 10 months, trying to look at ways that we could help reduce the impact upon the community, and upon the city, and upon the police department. We have developed this memorandum of agreement between the city and the county. Essentially, the county will be operating their court holding facility from, I think, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And so the county has agreed that if they're operating that holding facility during those hours, and if we arrest somebody during that time period, we can bring them to the current Latah County Jail, where they'll be booked, processed, and if necessary, transported down to the Nez Perce detention facility. In addition, there are some special event weekends included in the MOU. Those could be home football games, graduation, others where we might have more people in town, and maybe a slightly higher likelihood that we might have to arrest somebody during that time period. And so they have also agreed to operate the facility, the holding facility, from 6 p.m. until 2 a.m. on those, or through the course of weekend if it's a weekend long event. So certainly we are disappointed that the jail will be closing, but we also are thankful to our work with the county sheriff's office and commissioners to prepare the MOU, try to help minimize this impact upon the city and upon the department. So really, the city does not have any real specific obligations under this. For the most part, this is the county agreeing that essentially it will make that facility available for booking, processing, and transporting during their normal hours of operations and on those special event weekends. There are some exceptions. If we have an arrestee that's exceptionally combative, then we'll have to transport them directly down. It doesn't make sense trying to get them out of the vehicle to get back into another vehicle to get them down to the jail facility. That's not likely to be a frequent occurrence, but there'll be situations like that where they'll be, even if they are operating, we may transport directly down to Lewiston. But beyond that, it's a fairly basic MOU. It has a term initial, I think, of 3 years, if I recall correctly, underneath the agreement. And the county has indicated their desire to start work on hopefully developing, siting, and constructing a new jail facility for Latah County. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council might have.
Please.
So I'm just trying to make sure I understand parts of this. One is that, so during the normal workday, if someone is arrested during the day and they need to be booked and incarcerated or whatever you call it, is that what you call it? Booked in the jail, they need to stay there. Then the sheriff's department will take them down to Lewiston.
Yeah, so it's going to depend upon the nature. So they need to be booked and processed. Sometimes it may be bond out, maybe it'll be a book and release offense, or they have to be detained. So depending upon the nature, if it's book and release, obviously they'll process the little book, and then the individual, if they bond out before needing to be transported down to Lewiston, or if it's an offense that they can be released, then they'll do that. If it's an offense where the individual needs to stay in custody in order to be seen by the court, then they'll be held in custody, and the county will transport them down to Lewiston if they're delivered to them prior to closure of their hours of operations.
Detained, that was the word I was searching for. And then I'm not sure I understand how the jail is appropriate to house people at all if it has these problems. So how are they like making the area smaller?
So certainly they'll be holding a much smaller population. It'll only be those individuals that are needed to be seen by the court that day, is my understanding. So you'd go from a typical census of somewhere between 18 to 24 individuals to, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 or even fewer. So my understanding is they'll be using a much smaller portion. They won't be housing them overnight. They won't be feeding them overnight. They'll just be holding them during the day for their appearances at the court.
But weren't there like fire regulations and things that they weren't meeting?
There are. I mean,
how do you meet those
For interim
for 6
holding.
people and not for 8?
So there were a couple.
I'm just confused.
Sure. So there were some nuances to the items that need to be corrected. So for the fire suppression system, the actual sprinkler system, there were 3 cells in the Sally Port that did not have sprinkler heads in them. They were given the option at the time that we had the inspection and given corrections to not utilize those cells. So I think there is now the Sally Port may be a different question, because I presume they're going to still continue to use the Sally Port to transport and bring individuals in for as they move back and forth between Nez Perce County and the holding facility. So they still may need to make that alteration. And those were really kind of the 2 big ticket items. They end up with 4 kind of major life safety items they needed to address. The sprinkler heads that were missing in locations where they needed to be. The fire alarm system was reaching end of life. So you could not get replacement parts for it anymore. I think they were getting used parts off eBay or other sources to keep that system operational. It was identified that needed to be replaced at some point. It wasn't an immediate need because it's still currently functioning, but it is nearing end of life. They also had a couple locations in the jail where they didn't have visibility, needed to add security cameras. And then I think they needed to have 3 SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, in order to be able to evacuate prisoners. The state has standards, jail standards, but they really don't have adopted temporary holding facility standards. And I don't know how ICRIMP reviews a jail. That's typically the process you go through. The Idaho Sheriff's Association has developed jail standards. They conduct annual inspections of all jails in the state of Idaho. If a jail doesn't meet certification, that association has really no regulatory authority. They can't revoke occupancy of the building, but they will not certify the jail, which will have an impact upon their insurance cost, or if ICRIMP will even potentially insure them. There are no specific standards for temporary holding facilities, only for jails. And so I'm not an expert in what that necessarily means for their individual facility.
Mhm.
I would anticipate it's still going to need some level of repairs and maintenance, but probably at a lesser degree than if it was an actual jail facility.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
I think Haley has one first.
Bryce, no, I think Bryce beat me to it.
So on that note, thank you, Bill. Yeah, and this is a very frustrating position for the city to be in, and I feel for the resources of our officers that are going to be strained due to this. So, and how that affects the community. To that end, I am curious, given the parameters by which are laid out in the MOA, can I work with a hypothetical just on?
Give it a shot.
All right.
Don't know if I have an answer, but I'll try.
So after hours on a normal business day, when a Moscow Police Department officer has to transport somebody down to Nez Perce, they go through processing, they do all the things. Maybe they're not getting booked in the jail down there. Do they then get driven back up to Moscow?
No. So the county's indicated they are not going to provide transportation back up for release. So if somebody gets arrested for a bondable offense after hours and we transport them down and we hand them over to Nez Perce County for them to book and process, if they bond out, or if it's an offense somehow that they're able to get released, or if they bond out within an hour or two of being booked, then they will be responsible for finding their own transportation back.
So Moscow Police Department is not responsible to stay through the whole process.
Correct. Once we deliver the individual, it's really the county's responsibility. This is their contracted facility. I mean, the county views this very similar. Hey, we arrest somebody in Beauville, we bring them here to jail.
Sure.
We don't drive them back to Beauville.
Right.
So they're viewing that as being very similar situation.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think I have more questions, but that was my main one at the moment. So.
Haley,
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Bill, I'm just trying to understand. So in the text of the memorandum of agreement, section 2, we talk about defining the county responsibilities. I'm really unclear because I only am seeing mentions of delivering to Whitman County Jail. Is this from?
You're seeing Whitman County Jail?
Yeah, and granted, I'm looking at the city council regular meeting minutes on the website from July 7. So the version that we have in the packet only talks about transport to Whitman County Jail.
An actual MOU?
Yeah, the attachment that I can see. So I don't know if that's another duties as assigned or an additional addendum for
Well,
when
okay.
we can transfer across
So
straight
there's an
lines.
additional there.
Okay.
It's not, so Nez Perce County, in conversations in the course of the last few months, there was a concern that Nez Perce County at times could have limited
Yeah,
capacity.
capacity. Okay.
In those times where there's limited capacity, the county has already contracted with Whitman County to hold people in custody.
Latah and Whitman are in contract.
Correct.
Okay.
But Whitman County cannot process and book an individual for an Idaho crime. So if Nez Perce County does not have room, then dispatch will notify our officers. They will bring somebody in, Latah County will, to book and process here at the courthouse, and then they will transport them once they've been appropriately processed and are now formally in custody over to Whitman County if necessary.
And the county would do that during business hours.
During any time. Anytime that Nez Perce County does not
Overflow.
have capacity, because we
Because that
cannot
means
be
the
stuck
county is
with an
not-
individual that we've arrested. So if that, they hope that's not likely to occur.
Mm.
But in the event, they do have a backup contract with Whitman County to provide that should there be no room available in Nez Perce County.
Okay, I wanted to clarify the Whitman County.
Been a little time
piece.
since I looked at this. Thank you.
Thank you. I have deliberation, Mr. Mayor, but I won't subject Bill to standing up there while I deliberate. So I think that's my only question.
Any other questions from council at this time?
Bryce had mine covered.
I have a dumb one.
Okay.
I doubt it.
So forgive me. Isn't the county bound by code? I mean, or isn't there some big law that says they have to have the jail?
The counties are responsible for operating a jail, but they can contract, and there are a number of counties in Idaho that do not have their own jail facility and contract with an adjacent county.
Okay.
I think Latah may be the most populous county that's going to be into that category now. But it's, I think they can say they have contracted and that is the facility for Latah County.
Is it even, Stephen, with what they were paying to have the jail with what they're contracting out?
I can't
Do we
answer
know
that question for you. I do know, they had a belief that it was going to be a lower rate that they'd be paying, and it went up substantially through their negotiations.
Wow, didn't see that coming. Okay.
But I can't tell you, I don't have intimate knowledge into their
No, I don't
the
either.
jail
And
financing. I
I'm not
think,
asking the right people.
I think you'd have to put that question to the county.
Thank you.
Sandra?
Yeah.
There are a lot of things. I mean, everything that's been brought up has been actually going through my head because this is, as Bryce eloquently put it, a little frustrating. I appreciate that Bryce is more eloquent than I am. It's been really frustrating. And one of the things that I worry about a lot is the strain on our police department. We're not at full staff. It's not, as far as I know, unless Anthony has gone through and had some magic things come up, looking at anytime soon being full staff. And so on those nights when things are busy and hectic, what kind of strain on and on and on will this put on our department? And I know that's a magic ball and you can't exactly answer that, but in terms of trying to recruit people and getting people here, this seems like a real deterrent. And how do we, what can we do to help with that? And what can we do when things are a little crazy and out of control, and yet we're stuck having to transport 35 miles down the hill?
I think Anthony would be best to answer that question.
Chief Dellinger, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. So yes, we're not fully staffed yet. We are working as hard and as diligently as we can to get there, and knock on wood, we've had a little bit of increase in activity in that realm lately. However, I've tasked our operations commander in the short term to come up with basically an on-call schedule is what it's going to be. So officers who are not assigned to a shift are going to take their turn in the bucket for certain days, certain hours. And if we do have an arrest after hours and we are at minimum staffing, our current minimum staffing threshold is 3 officers. And when you think about that, it's a little daunting because we're approaching 30,000 people in this town with 3 officers on to protect all of those people. So we just can't do that. We can't lose an officer to a 3-hour turnaround in those instances. So we'll be bringing somebody in off on-call status and utilizing them as transport officers.
Do they get paid for being on on-call status?
Yes, they do.
Great.
To that end, when you, sorry, not so eloquent. I'm stumbling now. Yeah, you buttered me up too good. To that end, with that transport, especially being potentially, looking at it like an hour and a half, right? What is the morale within the police department with this new setup?
It certainly wasn't, I would say, a popular thing when it came out. But, we've been looking at the probability of this occurring. And so we took proactive steps to kind of have some internal communications about it. We even worked with our fleet department to have additional safeguards placed in our patrol vehicles to help us. We have bars in the windows now. So to protect the inmate, protect the officers better for a long distance or longer distance transport, things of that nature. And quite frankly, I just don't think we're going to know really what this is going to do until we're doing it, until we're in there.
Drew.
Yeah, I think this question will be directed to Mr. Billnut, but Anthony, I don't know, maybe you're up. But thank you both for being here and answering questions. I have similar views of most of our council members here tonight, but I'll save those pointed comments for deliberation. A couple questions I had with the MOU that sits before us in our packet. So operating hours during occasional business hours, right? That's when they'll be operating at 6 to 6, right?
7 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yeah.
is what they're defining as their operating hours.
And with that MOU, what are the terms on that, like time frame? Is that for a year? Or is it just kind of
It's a 3-year term.
a 3-year term? So over the course of 3 years, that they have to meet that requirement that we've kind of entered with them to some degree.
I guess I would have to say they are offering to assist us and to help alleviate the burden. I think the county could legally say all arrests you transport down, but they are. So, if you were to look at if they didn't fulfill their obligations underneath the agreement, there really is no cure for the city to pursue. This is an agreement. We both realize this is a significant impact on both agencies. They are offering to accept and book and process and transport while they have that facility staffed, which it's really not going to be a burden upon them. They're going to have full staffing to operate that facility. But there's no, there really is no legal obligation that they do that.
Yeah, no, it's thank you for answering my question. Another question I have, which, sorry, Chief, maybe you guys are gonna have to play musical chairs.
Up, down, up, down.
Up, down. But So I'm not trained in law enforcement. I've learned a lot about law enforcement, but I'm not going to say by any means I'm an expert by any means, especially when it comes to agreements between different agencies. And so my question would be, and I know I'm asking a specific question, but on average, let's say arrests that occur, especially like really difficult things. We talk about 3 officers, business hours, 7 to 6, right? When do I don't know if you track or if you have metrics, but off the top of your head, when do these arrests occur for people that really make it strain you and your, our dedicated officers?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously in the world of law enforcement, any day could be a really bad day.
Right.
And, I've seen days where we've had 4 arrests in the middle of the day. And then I've had other nights or days we go several days without arresting someone. But typically speaking, when you look at the averages, we do arrest more individuals at night and on weekends than during the daytime. Typically,
yeah. And of course, anomalies, we
Certainly.
know instances occur, and we're not in the business, certainly you're not in the business of predicting when those things happen. You're trained to handle situations when they occur and how they occur. And they don't really function based off of business hours because typically when crimes are committed, people aren't saying, I'm going to commit this during a business hour, right? Maybe they do.
I
don't
haven't
know.
had very many, no.
Yeah,
or
but
any, actually.
it's one of those things where we don't have criminals that are entrepreneurs thinking when they're going to, if they're going to do something, they might not have a clue or they might. But in the way of management of enforcement obligation, regular business hours, I don't think exist. And again, I'm not trained in law enforcement, but it appears to me that defining we're going to operate something during business hours are 24/7 for law enforcement. Their job is to protect us 24/7, not during 7 to 5. So.
Well, and to kind of caveat that on that, basically a lot of the motivation or necessity behind that is they have to have some sort of a holding facility for court activities. The sheriff's office is responsible for taking inmates to and from court proceedings, and certainly our courthouse is in the area that it's in. So they're going to be there anyway during those hours to do those activities. And so this is kind of their way of saying, hey, instead of, as Bill put it, you folks have to deal with all of your arrests down in Nez Perce County. We're hands off. They are coming to the table and saying, hey, we're going to be here anyway. We'll help you out, ease the burden a bit on Moscow City. And so that's just kind of where we landed on that.
No, thank you for, I'm sorry there was those questions, but you've answered them. Thank you.
Certainly.
One question that's came up, and again, I hate we need 2 mics. I'm sorry, Bill, but I do have a question for you. So, and again, this is going to help in my deliberation. So scenario, we transport an officer, or sorry, not an officer, hope not. An officer transport someone down to a facility. It's on the city the way, and again, I'm happy to put how I'm understanding the MOU out there and hoping to be corrected. Or so we take someone down for booking. Is the city, we the city then are responsible for those booking fees, or is that the county?
No, we're not responsible.
Okay, but in the MOU, that at least that I'm understanding with the county and Nez Perce, well, I know that since there wasn't a plan in place when this has been talked about, the fees have drastically gone up over time. So we could see, and I know this isn't your MOU or our MOU or the city of Moscow's or all the other wonderful communities within Latah County, but we could see increases to that if it's not in the MOU, correct?
The county could experience increased costs, certainly.
Yeah, certainly. And based on not having a solid agreement, but it wouldn't come back to the taxpayers in Moscow. It would, but through the county.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And if I wanted to loop back to Sandra's question about the on-call transport process, there was a memo that Anthony put together back in October of last year when we had this conversation. It was on October 21st with the council, where we were envisioning and estimating the cost of that on-call program. Direct labor costs were about $105,000 per year at that time. So there's going to be a little bit of inflation there. and then additional wear and tear and fuel on vehicles. So,
Oh, yeah.
we would, I mean, we're probably looking at 125,000 if we have to, staff this with a on-call program.
Worst case, minimum.
Hmm.
Is that your worst
That-
case?
That was based upon, at that point in time, I think it was for all arrestees. Well, I mean, the on-call is just covering the hours outside of operations. So it was the one officer per night. Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably right around that one. I'd say we'll be at that 125, I would guess, 125, 130 per year.
Okay, thank you, guys. Time for council to deliberate amongst themselves how they feel about the MOU. Haley.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I have a couple things written in all caps and I'm going to deliver them in a very calm tone, though, I promise. I feel this is very unkind to citizens, the citizens who may be booked and released in Lewiston. It is not necessarily, to Nez Perce County. It's unfair to our citizens in Moscow who will be affected by this. It is unfair to the sheriff county staff, how this is all played out. I think the communications on the county's part have been really disappointing. It's unkind to what we can control, which is the dignity of work for our Moscow police officers, department officers, and by extension, it's unkind to the sheriff deputies who are having to navigate what they may have trained for being reduced to playing a shuttle driver. And for me, what it comes down to is I can usually use this at work and it makes sense in a corporate setting. And I know that doesn't totally work in this case, but I strongly believe that someone's failure to plan does not constitute an emergency on my part. And I'm really frustrated that as public servants, we are having to address this failure to plan on the county's part and failure to communicate. Town is too small for this. Our communities are too small for this. And so I'm not sure that anyone's excited about this. It feels like a very crusty olive branch being extended to work with us on this. And what I'm really, really, really frustrated by is if we were in a situation where the city desperately needed to plan for a new fire station or other bond for city services, that it's like a race to the finish line. And I'm really frustrated that the county and the sheriff's department failure to plan is resulting in something that would potentially derail the chance for us to successfully pass a school bond if that is what the separate governing entity of the school board and school district wanted to do. I'm really frustrated. We're too small for this. We are pulling from the same pool of very limited resources. And so I guess I'm just espousing my disappointment. And I don't want to approve anything because I don't actually approve of it. So that's my deliberation and food for thought for you all.
I mean, to Haley's in there, and I appreciate your sentiments, Haley. And yeah, I don't want to approve it either, but I think in a response that Bill gave to Drew's first question, that if I'm understanding correctly, so chime back in, Bill. Sorry, I know you walked away. But that there's no legal obligation, therefore it would be advantageous, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in at this point, to enter into this agreement.
I think that's a fair characterization. I mean, the alternative is you don't enter into the MOU. County then says, okay, well, jail's down there.
Okay.
You approve the MOU, and at least from 7 to 6 and on some event weekends, we can take individuals up there.
Thank you for that.
That's really what your options are.
Thank you for that. And to that end, in section 6 of the MOU here, it's the termination clause. So either party at its discretion terminate this agreement for any reason. That's pretty broad. Should either party terminate this agreement prior to its expiration in 3 years, the terminating party shall provide a minimum of 90 days notice. Given that the town is too small to not have good communication, and clearly we've not had good communication throughout this whole process, it's my hope that the county holds up their end of the bargain here, but it's kind of a scary clause without much extra definition and extra clarification, in my opinion. So,
Sandra.
Yes, I agree. It is scary, and it has been very frustrating to go through this whole process. I think for everybody here, I think that's a fair statement to say. And it would be great if we had alternative plans, because I think it feels like we're in a box, and it feels like we don't have the luxury to not approve this. And I don't like being put in a box, but I think that's where we're at. And I'm grateful for all the feelings that are up here. I think we feel like this is wrong as a unit, and it's good to have that solidarity. But again, we don't have the luxury to not do this, because we do have a police force that works really hard. And if this is a little tiny bit of help to them, then I think we have to do that. I do hope that down the line, when jails are created and plans are made, that we come up with other memos of understanding on how those things can work and how we work together. So as much as it galls me, I feel that we have to approve this.
Okay.
I have some thoughts that I'll add to deliberation. I'm not going to go through everything that other people have said, but when this was originally introduced to council earlier this year, my feelings haven't changed on that. And so the statements that I've made towards leadership are still, those have not been changed one bit to the county. I will say what I've learned from this is how talented our staff is in working with them. And the thing, there's several things I'd like to highlight. But the two that stand out in my mind this evening are we're in the business of community equity and partnership. And there hasn't been, from my perspective, community partnership from the county on this issue. The reasons why I feel that way are because this hasn't been deliberated in a public setting very clearly, not only to the city and to city leadership, but also to the residents of Latah County. And I happen to be one of those. That should be obvious to everyone here, because I live in Moscow. And so I look at the options, one that have been put forth in the newspaper. The technique, let's prime the pump through the newspaper to get what we want, as Councilmember Lewis has stated, of, there's other governing entities that have interest. And so, for example, when an article was talked about how we could use a local option tax, the county could use a local option tax for a prison. To me, that clearly suggests that they don't know the temperature of the legislature in Idaho. And if we were going to use a local option tax, I think we should be using that to benefit the residents of the county. And clearly an argument could be made that presented, but to me, that is the last stop of how communities fulfill people, or the very extreme individuals need a place to go. Local option tax should benefit, I think, the development of families and children and other individuals in the area. And I'm not going to get into my opinions about correctional facilities in the United States. That's for a different conversation I'm happy to have, but not going to do it here because it's a long conversation for me with lots of notes. But furthermore, the ability to say that it was intended to be hopeful, but to me, it was intended to be uneducated about our legislature. And that's not me critiquing our legislature. That's just the reality of what they've said many times. A local option tax just isn't on the table. To the next point of that there are areas that we can invest in families, children, and community that would hopefully steer them away from correctional facilities rather than investing in them. And again, I am happy to talk about this all day, but I'm not going to go into great detail. Furthermore, the thing that I find very concerning is when I see staff from the county and also other elected officials talk about where's the transparency. I also raise my flag of transparency, saying, well, community partnership is key in a small community and a county, and we need to talk about this together, because safety is prime. And that's why I personally like raising and rearing a family here in Moscow. That's why I like living here, having a business. And so the biggest concern that I have with this is under the scenario of transport. Again, I have always been impressed with our deputies on the county, and then also, of course, with our staff, our police officers, especially given not only is it a very difficult career, but also it's a hard career for recruitment. But we have to think about human nature and human ability on this, and I'm disappointed that the county hasn't thought about this. So, for example, where my mind has gone on this issue is we have, whether you pick your whoever you want, sheriff or deputies here in Moscow, whoever they may be, it's late, they've worked a hard shift, they've worked a couple shifts, and now something occurs where it might not be the largest crime, but now they have, and it's a half an hour. So now they're going to add multiple hours onto a long shift already, take people down. And I agree that could happen where I know they're going to do that. But over time, in my opinion, we're going to see an increase countywide of small crime, because that's going to be a difficult thing for officers, deputies to be involved with. And what we need to be saying as a community and as a county is that we value safety for all of our citizens. That is something that should always be talked about. And to me, this decision that wasn't made in a public forum, it had a preset idea that we're going to close a jail, and then they've gone through multitude and a myriad of solutions to try to validate an opinion that affects all of us in our public safety. Furthermore, through this issue, I say why. And I wish I could answer that, and I wish that our commissioners and other people could answer it, but they can't. And better is possible in a variety of ways, but it's definitely better on this issue. And I'd like to thank our staff, Chief Dollinger, thank you, and your officers for working with this. This issue is not over, and collaboration is needed throughout this whole process. And I would appreciate if anyone from the county or leadership from the county that has concerns with what I say, contact me directly. I am more than happy, and I'm looking at the cameras, more than happy to sit down and talk with you about this. This is me as someone that has been elected to represent in a community. And so if you don't like what I'm saying, talk to me. And definitely I can talk back about the poor execution that we're seeing here tonight.
Gina.
So part of the reason that I started almost 10 years ago being a city councilor is the fact that I believe government is the most effective and the most responsive, closest to the people. And city council was a way to give back to my home. I'm getting emotional. And what I'm experiencing right now is just such a complete disappointment in what we have worked so hard in the time that I've been sitting at this desk. The partnerships in our community have been what has made it strong. Just like Jenny was saying tonight about the Heart of the Arts and the City of Moscow, those little tiny connections that make us a great place. And what we have here is one of our pieces of our mission, public safety. That is, I'm scratching my head. I mean, I was in the loop in the beginning when we started hearing these things. And I got to tell you, I guess I had a hope that we would somehow meet in the middle, and that we would, and maybe this MOU is the best we can do for the time being. I'm not happy with it either. I don't think any of us are. But the fact of the matter is, it's here, and it is the way that we're going to have to exhibit or do our thing for a while. But it's just such an absolute collapse of what ought to be essential communication in our county. It ought to be this way with Beauville, it ought to be this way with Kendrick, and it ought to be this way with Moscow. And I don't know how we got here so precipitously. And it makes me kind of sick to my stomach. I'll probably cry later, not in front of all of you, because mascara is not good. But I really think that this is I want to hope that it's not the beginning of a bigger erosion in our community. We can't do that. We're not big enough to have things fall apart the way they are. And there were probably some decisions that made a line, okay, this is what our problem is. We need to do this and this and this from the county side. I want to assume that because these are not stupid people any more than I'm stupid or any of the 6 or 7 of us up here are stupid. But I don't know how we got here. And it's terrible. And I'm sick to my stomach with it. And I don't like the box that we're in either, Sandra. I don't like the corner. I don't like anything to do with a 90-degree angle in this decision. But I don't know that we were presented with any choices along the way either. And I'm sorry, Anthony, or Chief, I'm sorry. I call you Anthony, but Chief, I'm sorry that it's your already overworked people that are going to carry the brunt of this. And I got to tell you, I don't know if Nez Perce County has read this MOU, but I wouldn't be happy if all those people that are transported down there got left there. That to me is a little bit like a loose end. So I don't know. I'll support it because it is something we have to do as a city that's part of one of our essential missions, but is it perfect? No.
Okay. So we've come to the crux of the issue now and need an action, a
I'll take
motion.
it.
Okay,
As much as I hate to. I move we approve the proposed memorandum of agreement with Latah County.
Second.
moved and seconded. Okay, Sandra,
Aye.
Bryce,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
and Haley.
Symbolic no.
I don't know if that helps.
What does that
but
mean?
Okay.
Okay, so 6-1, the proposed memorandum of agreement is approved. And that takes us to the end of the regular agenda, and we move on now to city council reports, starting with Julia.
It's been pretty light here the last couple weeks, to be honest. Different people have been on vacation. Fair and affordable housing got canceled. So I don't really have much to report.
Cool. Drew.
Yeah, similar comments as Julia. I was able to attend historic preservation for the first part of the meeting, and folks are busy working on Orchid Awards and getting things squared away for the beginning of the year, looking for nominations. And so for people at home in the audience or friends that you might know, they're looking for those nominations and are very eager for that ceremony that comes early this fall. Also would like to attended Art Walk this year. And the thing that I just like to mention briefly is as someone who finds myself in the space of lots of artists at times, I'm really thankful for our city for having this venue, but also for educating the public about how really mundane and boring things work. If you see like our staff, they're educating about how sewer systems work there. And not only are educating, but they're excited about educating people. And they have like very intriguing demonstrations. And they show typically these things aren't thought about until they don't work. And the one thing I appreciate is there's a lot of, they're very proactive about explaining about how solutions can be avoided. And they do it really happily. and you can see the passion that carries through that. And everyone that I'm aware, we talk about all these public work projects, and really grateful for staff that are eager to teach people about what a city actually does and the services that we provide. And I hope when you flush a toilet, you think, if you look at history, sanitation is a really important thing to a community. And so I know that's not art, but it is art of how they were teaching and engaging with the community. So
90 miles of wastewater sewers in the city. That's what I learned at
yeah, so
Refreshing.
Yeah, refreshing.
Sandra.
Ooh. I also went to Art Walk, and two things did stand out to me. And one, I mean, I agree with you. I'm really grateful for the city staff that's there and all the work they do. And I mean, I love being able to sign the snowplow blade with my name and my neighbor's name who was on vacation. I didn't want him to be sad. That said, it made it really hard to get to the art, right? It was tough to get into all the buildings this year to see the art. And so I hope that maybe we can take a minute, and maybe not a minute now, but down the line, to figure out how we can incorporate the art portion of Art Walk like it used to be into the city event that it's turned into, with all the things that aren't arty. Because I think both are important. I don't know both need to be at that type of venue, because it was hard to get in to see the artwork of the artists. So there was that. But again, I was super appreciative, right? It was fun to do all the things. I just didn't get to do all the things. So poor me, poor Moscow. And then the other thing I got to go to, because I'm old, I got to put my readers on. I think I have a date down here. It was June. Nah, I can't even find it. I wrote it down. Now I can't find it. End of June, I was asked by Habitat of Humanity to go to a wall raising, and it was pretty great. Jake's house, Jake over by Palouse Prairie Charter School, had the skeleton version of a house, and he has some kiddos. And I got to be there with a whole bunch of people and talk to him about how great it is to be a part of the city, and to see him pounding those nails. And everyone got to sign boards, and I appreciate Habitat and the work they do, and to have a new house for a new family that's just been really trying to get together and be a solid family. And what I told them there, that I was excited that they were now a part of Moscow, and that I hope Moscow treated them well, and that they embrace all that there is, because having a home is a really special thing, and it's special to have them here. So that was a really great event to go to, and I appreciated being asked and being in the position to be able to go. But other than that, my commission meetings were not held because of the scary 4th of July. And I say that because I'm a dog owner. And other than that, yeah, it was quiet, except for all the fireworks that seem to never stop.
Gina.
I told you about the tree commission last week, or last council meeting, so I can't tell you about it again, even though it's pretty awesome. What will happen this week is Transportation Commission after a little bit of a recess. So it'll be nice to sit down with my fellow transportation heads and talk through some things. I was battling wearing one of my Labradoodles during 4th of July, but I appreciated what I could see. And it was really fun and really neat that it kind of pulled us together and we celebrated our nation. That's all I know.
Bryce.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I've been prone to do, I'm going to go back in time and work my way to the present day. So our last council meeting was on June 16th, which was a while ago, actually. And the following day, many of us went down to AIC, which Julia, Sandra, Haley, and the mayor and I. Yeah, Drew and Gina couldn't make it. Okay, I want to make sure I didn't leave you out. But yeah, we went down to the Association of Idaho Cities annual conference, which is always a really informative and really good resource opportunity. Just meeting with people, other local leaders from across the state is really impactful, and I think really educational to hear how they are tackling a lot of the same issues that we're tackling here, communities of different sizes, different populations, geographies, et cetera. And attending various workshops as well. We had admin committee on the 23rd, much of which was on the consent agenda tonight. On the 25th, we had a planning and zoning commission meeting. We hadn't had one in a while. And there was a public hearing to discuss a rezone for the Woodbury subdivision, creating more lots for homes from 79 to 107 lots. And so, a lot of people spoke in favor and in opposition. So I'm sure that we'll see that coming our way in the not so distant future.
Good.
And then went to Art Walk as well. It's great, as was discussed. And then I have Arts Commission meeting tomorrow, planning and zoning on Wednesday. And all last week I was back in Kansas City and telling my friends and family back there how proud I am to represent the great community of Moscow and speaking highly about the good things we have going on here. So.
Haley.
I'm also working backwards. Let's look. We've got, I guess right before we all went to the Association of Idaho Cities conference in Boise. Some good ideas, some maybe recycled ideas. But I think the other part that is really cool is there were a number of conversations, some of the best things that come from the roundtables, and Buell, I think maybe the mayor was asking for advice on how to encourage parkland dedication. And so it's like, well, there's a way to put it into code to make sure that any new development plans accordingly to either provide the city with the land. Anyway, there were some cool ideas sharings a lot. So while we maybe didn't come home with as many new ideas as I would have hoped, we are a beacon of some really cool city governance models that have created Moscow and the community we love. So it was cool to be to have good news and ideas to share with people who are trying to solve real problems in their communities. The 26th, so I had a 2-for-1. I went to the Parks and Rec meeting. Business as usual. I did want to flag. I saw flyers for micro soccer. Starts in August. Does this sound right? Yep. And always need refs and coaches. And then immediately following that, I zipped over to downtown for the art walk. My favorite idea was not art related, to your point, Sandra. I think we should have a naming contest for the sewer robot guy who goes around and all the, come on, if ITD can do snowplow naming contests, there are some hidden gems to be had in a naming contest like that. So watch out, council leadership. I'm going to be bringing that one to the main stage. And then Smart Transit had their required Idaho Transportation Department site visit, since they receive funds from a dedicated mechanism through ITD. They present a really big like compliance binder, and it's a very cordial exchange, but it was like really, really high accolades from ITD. There are a couple of improvements that they suggested to us that are nothing surprising, nothing scary, but the board and the Smart Transit staff have been working to address those things. And ridership data, we finally like squared up the old system of ridership data with the new ridership data. So like we will be having reports that actually make sense and don't just looks like zeros and ones next to each other. What was it? Matrix style. Yeah. And just looking ahead, PBAC will meet next week. And then I also wanted to make sure everyone knows that Rendezvous in the Park, I want to say the 43rd Rendezvous in the Park. I don't remember if it was in what year we've got listed, but next week I'm really excited. It started as a city event, so that's why I'm very passionate about it. It was spun off into its own nonprofit and it's been sustained as such since then. They are taking volunteers. You can earn a ticket. And there is a Zydeco band on Saturday, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to cut a rug to a Zydeco band in East City Park on Saturday night. So watch out. That's what I got, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Been pretty quiet for me too. For the most part, I was out floating around on the North Atlantic above the Arctic Circle, which was really great. Airport board met, and subsequent to that, they've initiated a program to put together an air service enhancement committee, because the airport can't really lobby the airlines on its own behalf to enhance air service. So anybody who's in the private industry, you'll probably get hit on for some support, some assistance in this committee's efforts to bring in other airlines and enhance the service that we do have. And to do that, it's a separate 501c6 entity that'll have its own finances and do its own lobbying of the airlines, and have hopefully a lot more traction than just the airport itself doing that. And coming up tomorrow morning, right here, 8:30 in the AM, the annual budget workshop. 288 pages of line items that council will go over and workshop and see what they think. Alterations as necessary, commentary, make sure the city's on the right path. So if you want to participate in that, open meeting right here, 8:30 in the AM. And hopefully we get through the whole thing in one day flat.
There will be coffee.
Oh yeah, there's coffee.
Mr. Mayor, but just to clarify, that there's no public comment during the workshop tomorrow, is
That
it?
depends on the host of the workshop.
You can sleep on it. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. It's not something we usually do public comment on.
Okay. Just want to
So-
make sure.
Anything from staff?
Nothing from staff.
Okay, there we go. At this time,
I move we
motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second?
Does that mean we have no public comment at the budget meeting tomorrow? Budget workshop tomorrow? Clarify, I'm sorry, I only got half of what you said.
We do not normally take we do not normally take public comment at the budget hearing. You're welcome to deliberate this in public.
No, I just want it to be clear for everybody listening, all 12 people that are listening.
But
Yeah.
to my understanding, they have the opportunity on August 3rd or 4th.
Correct. August 4th is the official public hearing, so that is open
So
for
they
public
do have-
testimony.
so There is opportunity.
Tomorrow is just a workshop. The council hasn't fully formulated the budget. You're reviewing the draft, so we typically do not accept public comment during the workshop.
Okay.
For what it's worth, Mr. Mayor and Madam President, Madam President, I would prioritize like having it be a maintained workshop where we are deliberating in a public setting amongst council. And I would obviously welcome any public comment by email between the discussion that happens yesterday and the public hearing on August 4th. But that is one of the few chances where we carve out a huge block of time for us to workshop with each other our priorities. So for what it's worth.
We have a motion to adjourn, but no second.
Second, you got it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.